My name is Cyrus, and I woke up not knowing who I was supposed to be. The ceiling above me looked wrong. Too high, too ornate. Golden beams crossed overhead, carved with patterns that twisted like vines, and my eyes couldn't focus on them properly. Everything blurred together like looking through water. I tried to sit up, but my body felt heavy, disconnected from my brain. My hands gripped the sheets beneath me, silk that slid between my fingers, expensive and unfamiliar. My head throbbed with images that didn't belong to me. Or maybe they did. I couldn't tell anymore. There were two sets of memories fighting inside my skull. One showed me cramped apartments and glowing screens, cars honking in traffic, the smell of coffee from a drive-through window. The other gave me sword lessons in a courtyard, servants bowing as I passed, the weight of expectations pressing down on my shoulders since childhood. Both felt real. Both felt like mine. I pressed my palms against my temples, trying to squeeze out the confusion. Which life was I living? Which person was I? The room around me answered that question. Stone walls hung with tapestries depicting battles. A sword mounted above the fireplace. Armor standing in the corner like a silent guard. This wasn't a dream. This was real, solid, present. I was Cyrus, son of Lord Draken, youngest child of the Steelhaven family. But I was also someone else. Someone from a world without magic or knights or castles. Someone who'd lived an entire different life before waking up here. The memories settled like dust after a storm, still swirling but no longer blinding me. I took a deep breath and felt something else, something that made my heart race faster. A warmth in my chest, like an ember waiting to burst into flame. Power. I could feel it humming beneath my skin, patient and vast. I stood on shaky legs and walked to the window. The morning sun cast long shadows across the training grounds below. Knights in gleaming armor practiced their forms, their movements precise and deadly. Beyond the castle walls, the city of Steelhaven spread out like a living thing, smoke rising from chimneys, people moving through streets like blood through veins. This was mine to protect, mine to lead. The power in my chest pulsed stronger, responding to my determination. I didn't understand it yet, but I would. I had to. Whatever I was now, whoever I become, I wouldn't waste this chance. I spent the morning locked in my room, pacing and thinking. The power inside me wasn't just a feeling anymore. It was something I could almost touch, almost see when I closed my eyes. Like a door waiting to be opened. I focused on it, reaching inward with my mind. The warmth responded, spreading through my limbs, and suddenly I saw it. Not with my eyes, but with something deeper. A system, an interface, glowing text that appeared in my thoughts, clear as spoken words. Night Ascension's system initialized. My breath caught. This was it. This was the power I'd felt. Not magic in the traditional sense, but something stranger. Something that could change everything. The interface showed categories and options, but most of them were grayed out, locked. I could see the outline of what was possible. Upgrading loyal knights with rare ores. Transforming ordinary soldiers into legendary warriors. Building an army that could shake kingdoms. But the screen that mattered most was almost empty. Loyal knights, 0. Bound warriors, 0. Available upgrades, none. The system was useless without followers. Without people who would swear themselves to me completely, who would trust me with their lives and futures. I couldn't just recruit anyone. The system required genuine loyalty, true bonds forged through shared purpose and mutual respect. I sat on the edge of my bed, running my hands through my hair. The previous Cyrus had been unremarkable. Adequate at swordplay, but not exceptional. Smart enough, but not brilliant. Liked well enough, but not loved. He'd never inspired the kind of devotion I needed. But I was different now. I had knowledge from another world, strategies and ideas that didn't exist here. I had this system waiting to be unleashed. I had determination burning in my gut like fire. I just needed a chance to prove myself. A chance to gather people who would believe in me. The dinner bell rang through the castle, echoing off stone walls. Time to face my family. The grand hall of Steelhaven Castle could fit 100 people comfortably. Tonight, it held only 4. My footsteps echoed as I walked across polished stone floors toward the long table where my family waited. Candles flickered in iron holders, casting dancing shadows that made the ancestral portraits on the walls seem alive. Lord Draken sat at the head of the table, his presence filling the room even in silence. Gray streaked his dark hair, and scars crisscrossed his weathered hands. Those hands had held swords in more battles than I could count. He looked up as I approached, his eyes sharp and measuring. To his right sat Dame Celine, my mother. She wore a simple gown of deep blue, but her bearing was that of a warrior. She'd earned her knighthood before marriage, and everyone knew she could still outfight half the men in our garrison. Across from her, my sister Mira picked at her food with obvious boredom. She was 2 years older than me, brilliant with numbers and logistics, and she made it clear more than once that she'd make a better heir than I ever would. "Cyrus," my father said, nodding toward my seat. "You look better. The fever broke, I take it." Fever, right? The old Cyrus had been sick for 3 days before I woke up in his body. That explained some things. "Yes, father. I feel stronger than before, actually." Mira snorted. "That wouldn't take much." "Mira." My mother's voice was soft but carried weight. Mira went back to her food without another word. I sat down, and servants brought out the meal. Roasted meat, fresh bread, vegetables, and butter. The smell made my stomach growl, and I realized I hadn't eaten in days. I forced myself to eat slowly, to maintain some dignity, even though I wanted to devour everything on my plate. "I have a request," I said, breaking the silence. My voice came out steadier than I expected. "I want permission to visit the military encampment, to recruit knights for my personal guard." The table went quiet. Even the servants stopped moving. My father set down his cup with deliberate care. "Your personal guard?" Mira leaned forward, eyebrows raised. "You're barely 18. What do you need a personal guard for? Planning to start your own war?" "Planning to be prepared," I said, meeting her gaze. "I'm a lord's son. I should have loyal warriors at my side. Men who answer to me directly. Men who answer to you." My father's voice was neutral, giving nothing away. "And what would you do with these men?" This was the moment. I could feel the weight of their attention, the skepticism hanging in the air like smoke. The old Cyrus would have stumbled over his words, made vague promises about training and responsibility. I wasn't the old Cyrus anymore. "I want to build something," I said. "Not just for me, but for Steelhaven. Our territory is strong, but it could be stronger. We have good soldiers, but they could be exceptional. Give me 10 knights. Let me handpick them from our forces. I'll forge them into warriors worthy of our family name." Ambitious words, my mother said. She studied me with eyes that missed nothing. "Where is this coming from, Cyrus? You've never shown interest in command before." The fever changed something. It wasn't entirely a lie. I had dreams. Visions. I saw what I could become if I stopped being afraid to reach for it. Mira rolled her eyes. "Fever dreams. Very inspiring." "Mira." My father's voice was sharp this time. He looked at me for a long moment, and I forced myself not to look away, to let him see whatever he needed to see. Finally, he nodded. 10 knights. You may choose them yourself from the encampment. But understand this, Cyrus." He leaned forward, his scarred hands flat on the table. "If you fail them, if you waste their potential or lead them poorly, it reflects on this family. On me. Do you accept that responsibility?" My heart pounded. "Edo." "Then you have my permission. Report to Captain Rotter tomorrow at dawn. He'll show you the available men." My father picked up his cup again, signaling the conversation was over. "Don't make me regret this trust." "I won't, father. I promise." Mira shook her head, but said nothing. My mother watched me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Concern? Curiosity? Hope? The rest of the meal passed in relative silence, but I barely tasted the food anymore. My mind raced with possibilities. 10 knights. 10 potential loyal followers. If I chose wisely, if I earned their genuine devotion, I could activate the system. I could begin the transformation. This was my chance. My first real step toward becoming something more than the forgettable youngest son of House Steelhaven. I wouldn't waste it. The heavy doors of the grand hall closed behind the servants as they cleared the last of the dinner plates. The smell of roasted meat and fresh bread still hung in the air, mixing with the scent of burning candles that cast dancing shadows across the stone walls. I watched Mother settle back into her chair, her fingers tracing the carved armrest. The lines around her eyes seemed deeper tonight. Dame Celine looked tired. More than tired. Worn. "Mother," I began, keeping my voice steady. "I know what you're thinking." She glanced up at me, and I saw the worry there, plain as day. Her lips pressed together in that way they did when she was holding back words she thought might hurt me. "Do you?" she asked softly. "Do you truly understand what concerns me, Cyrus?" I moved closer, pulling a chair across the stone floor. The scraping sound echoed through the hall. I sat across from her, close enough that I could see the silver threads in her dark hair catching the candlelight. "You think I'm rushing into something dangerous? That I'm too young, too ambitious? That I'll make choices that could destroy our family?" Mother's breath caught. She looked away, toward the tall windows where darkness pressed against the glass. "Your father had that same fire in his eyes," she whispered. "That same certainty. And it led him to glory, yes, but also to an early grave." The words stung, but I understood them. Father had been reckless in his final campaign, pushing too hard, too fast. I'd learned about it from his own journals, the ones Mother didn't know I'd read. "I'm not Father," I said firmly. "I have his drive, perhaps, but I also have something he didn't." She turned back to me, eyebrows raised in question. "I have you. I have your wisdom, your caution. I have Zarek's experience. And I have knowledge of how to use the system that Father never possessed." I leaned forward, meeting her gaze directly. "I won't make reckless choices, Mother. Every decision I make, I'll consider its consequences. Not just for me, but for our family, our people, our legacy." Dame Celine's hands trembled slightly as she reached across and took mine. Her skin was warm, her grip stronger than I expected. "You speak with such confidence," she said. "Like a lord already, not a boy barely past his coming of age. Because I've seen what's possible. The system can elevate loyal knights beyond anything we've known. But I won't abuse that power. I'll use it wisely, carefully. I'll build something lasting, not just chase glory." She studied my face for a long moment, searching for something. The candles flickered, and somewhere in the castle, a door banged shut. "You'll be careful?" she asked. "You'll take Zarek with you? You'll listen to those with experience?" "I promise." I squeezed her hands gently. "Everything I do for our family. To secure our future, to make Steel Haven stronger. I won't throw my life away on foolish risks." Mother's eyes glistened with moisture, but she blinked it back. She pulled one hand free and placed it against my cheek the way she had when I was small. "Then you have my blessing," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Take the knights you need. Build your force. But remember, Cyrus, that power without wisdom is just another form of weakness." "I'll remember." She managed a small smile then, tired but genuine. "Your father will be proud of the man you're becoming. I only wish he could see it." We sat together in the quiet hall for a while longer, the weight of her trust settling on my shoulders like a cloak. It felt heavy, but not unbearable. It felt right. When I finally stood to leave, Mother caught my hand one last time. "Be careful in those hills, my son. Magic beasts are not to be taken lightly." "I will, Mother. I promise." I left her there among the candles and shadows, feeling both the burden and the gift of her blessing. The next morning came too quickly. The sun barely touched the horizon when Zarek and I rode out from Steelhaven's gates, heading toward the military encampment that lay an hour's ride to the east. The morning air bit at my face, crisp and cold, carrying the smell of autumn leaves and distant campfires. Zarek rode beside me in silence for most of the journey, his weathered face set in that expression he wore when he was thinking hard about something. Finally, as the canvas tents of the camp came into view across the field, he spoke. "You know what kind of knights you're looking for? Loyal ones," I said immediately. "Skilled ones. Men who will follow orders, but also think for themselves." He grunted. "That's a tall order. Most soldiers follow orders or think. Rarely both. Then I'll find the rare ones." The camp spread before us like a small city of its own. Rows of white tents stretched in organized lines, with practice yards marked out between them. The sound of steel on steel rang through the air as soldiers drilled, their shouts mixing with the commands of their officers. Smoke rose from cooking fires, and the smell of porridge and coffee drifted on the wind. We dismounted near the command tent, and a young officer hurried over to take our horses. He recognized me immediately, his eyes widening slightly before he bowed. "Lord Cyrus, Captain Zarek. Welcome. Commander Brent is expecting you." But I waved him off. "We're not here to sit in tents and discuss strategy. I want to see the knights train. Take us to the practice yards." The officer hesitated, glancing at Zarek, who nodded. "You heard him." We walked through the camp, drawing stares from soldiers who stopped their work to watch us pass. I kept my head up, my posture straight. These men needed to see confidence, strength. They needed to see someone worth following. The main practice yard was a wide space of packed dirt, marked with wooden posts and training dummies. 20 knights in light armor were engaged in sparring matches, their movements quick and practiced. Steel rang against steel, and dust rose from their footwork. I stood at the edge of the yard, watching carefully. Zarek crossed his arms beside me. "Standard training," he muttered. "Nothing special about these men. They're adequate, but that's all." "You're looking at what they are," I said quietly. "I'm looking at what they could become." I watched each pair of sparring knights, noting their techniques, their reactions, their discipline. Most were competent, but unremarkable. Then my eyes caught on a tall knight with dark hair, fighting against 2 opponents at once. He moved with a fluid grace, his swordwork efficient rather than flashy. When one opponent tried to flank him, he adjusted without panic, his footwork smooth. "That one," I pointed. "What's his name?" Zarek squinted. "Jaden, I think. Good fighter, but no family to speak of. That's why he's still here in the regular ranks." "Perfect. No complicated loyalties, no competing obligations." I continued watching, picking out other knights who showed promise. A woman with quick reflexes who disarmed her opponent in 3 moves. A stocky man whose defensive stance was nearly perfect. A young knight whose eyes never stopped tracking his surroundings, even in the midst of a bout. Over the next 2 hours, I moved through the camp, watching different groups train. Zarek thought I was wasting time. I could tell by the way he shifted his weight, by his increasingly frequent sighs. "Cyrus, we could just ask the commander for his best men. This is taking too long." "The commander would give me the men with the best records," I replied, not taking my eyes off a sparring match. "I want the men with the best potential." "That's different." By midday, I had my list. 10 names, carefully chosen. 9 men and 1 woman, all with different strengths, but sharing certain qualities I'd recognized. Discipline, awareness, the ability to adapt. And something else, something harder to define. A hunger in their eyes, a desire to be more than they were. I had Jaden called over first. He approached with proper military bearing, fist over his heart in salute. Sweat darkened his hair and stained his tunic, but his eyes were sharp and alert. "Sir," he said simply, "what do you want from your service, Jaden?" I asked directly. The question clearly surprised him. He blinked, then considered carefully before answering. "To serve with honor, sir. To become stronger. To make something of myself beyond what birth decided for me. And if I told you I could help you become far more than a common knight, that I have methods to unlock potential you don't even know you possess." His eyes narrowed slightly, but I saw interest there, not suspicion. "I'd ask what the cost was, sir." "Smart man. Complete loyalty. Unwavering commitment to our mission. Your service belongs to me, to House Steelhaven, above all else. In return, I'll make you powerful beyond your current dreams." Jaden's jaw tightened. I could see him processing, weighing, deciding. Then he dropped to one knee in the dust. "My sword is yours, Lord Cyrus. My life, my loyalty, everything I have or will become. Rise," I said, extending my hand to help him up. "Welcome to my personal guard." I repeated similar conversations with the other 9 knights I'd selected. Some were more skeptical than others, but all ultimately agreed. They had little to lose and everything to gain. By the time the sun began its descent toward the western hills, I had my team assembled before me. 10 knights, standing at attention in a line. Young Jaden at the center, the woman fighter named Lisa to his right, the defensive specialist called Torvin to his left, and 7 others whose skills complemented each other perfectly. Zarek stood behind me, and I could feel his doubt like a weight pressing on my shoulders. He still didn't see it. He saw 10 decent soldiers, nothing more. But I saw the seeds of something extraordinary. With the system's power, I could transform these 10 knights into an elite force that would make other nobles tremble. I just needed time and the right resources. "We leave at dawn," I announced to them. "Pack light, but bring your best weapons. We're heading into the autumn hills for a hunt. Magical beasts, dangerous prey, but the rewards will be worth the risk." "What kind of beasts, sir?" Lisa asked, her voice steady. "Shadow lashers. Fast, deadly, but their cores are valuable, and their meat can enhance a warrior's abilities." I saw eagerness flash across several faces. Good. They weren't afraid of challenge. "Rest a night," I continued. "Tomorrow, we ride hard." Dismissed. They saluted and dispersed to prepare. I turned to Zarek, who was shaking his head slowly. "You really think these soldiers are special?" he asked. "I know they are," I replied. "You'll see soon enough." That night passed slowly. I couldn't sleep well, my mind racing with plans and possibilities. The system's interface glowed faintly in my vision when I focused on it, showing my current status, my available points, the potential upgrades I could grant to my new knights once we captured enough Shadow Lasher cores. Dawn came with a gray sky and the smell of rain in the air. I dressed quickly in traveling clothes, sturdy leather armor that allowed movement while providing protection. My sword hung on my side, its weight familiar and reassuring. The courtyard of Steelhaven was already bustling when I descended. Horses stamped and snorted, their breath misting in the cold morning air. My 10 knights were assembled, checking their gear, securing their packs. They moved with the efficient purpose of experienced soldiers. Zarek approached leading my horse, a strong gray gelding named Stormwind. "Everything's ready. We've got supplies for 4 days, medical kits, rope, and hunting tools." "Good." I swung into the saddle, settling into the familiar position. "Form up." My knights mounted quickly, falling into a loose column formation. I led them out through the gates as the sun finally broke over the eastern horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. The road to the autumn hills stretched before us, winding through farmland at first, then gradually climbing into rougher terrain. We rode at a steady pace, not hurrying but not dawdling either. The horses' hooves beat a rhythmic pattern on the packed earth. As we traveled, I observed my new team. They rode well, stayed alert, kept their formation without constant reminders. Jaden had naturally taken a position near the front, just behind Zarek and me. Leadership material, definitely. The landscape changed as we climbed higher. Trees grew denser, their leaves brilliant reds and golds in the autumn sun. The air grew cooler, sharper. By midday, we'd left the cultivated lands behind and entered true wilderness. Zarek called for a brief rest near a stream. The knights dismounted to water the horses and refill canteens. I used the time to study the map I brought, tracing our route with my finger. "Another 3 hours to the foothills," I said to Zarek. "Then we start climbing properly. Shadow lashers prefer the higher elevations where the trees grow thick. Terrain will slow us down," Zarek observed, chewing on a piece of dried meat. "Might be full dark before we reach good hunting grounds." I considered that. We could make camp at the base of the hills, start fresh in the morning when we had full daylight. That would be the safe choice, the cautious choice. But shadow lashers were most active at twilight and during the night. If we arrived in darkness, we'd actually have a better chance of encountering them quickly. We push on, I decided. No extended rest. We ride until we reach the hunting grounds, even if it means traveling after dark. Zarek's eyebrows rose. "That's harder on the horses. And on the men. They can handle it. So can we." I raised my voice so all the knights could hear. "Pack up. We're moving out. No stops until we reach the hills." If anyone objected, they kept it to themselves. Within minutes we were mounted and moving again, the pace slightly faster now. The afternoon wore on. My legs grew sore from the constant riding, and I noticed several knights shifting position in their saddles, seeking comfort. But no one complained. Good. The sun began its descent, painting long shadows across our path. The trees grew taller, their trunks thicker, their branches forming a canopy overhead that blocked much of the remaining light. The temperature dropped noticeably, and I was glad for my leather armor's warmth. Getting dark, Zarek said unnecessarily. His hand rested on his sword hilt, an unconscious gesture of wariness. Another hour, I estimated, studying the rising terrain ahead. We're close. The horses struggled with the steeper inclines, their breathing becoming labored. We had to slow our pace, picking our way carefully up rocky slopes and around fallen logs. The last light of day faded completely, leaving us in twilight gloom. Then night arrived fully, and with it, a different world. The forest sounds changed. Somewhere an owl called. Small creatures rustled in the underbrush. And beneath it all, a tension I could feel but not name, like the air before storm. There, I pointed ahead to where the ground leveled out slightly. We'll base ourselves there, close enough to the higher elevations, but defensible. We reached the small clearing and dismounted. The knights moved efficiently even in the darkness, establishing a basic camp, securing the horses, posting watch positions. They were professionals, no doubt about that. I stood at the edge of the clearing, looking up at the dark hills rising above us. Somewhere up there, shadow lashers prowled through the night. Fast predators with razor claws and the ability to blend into darkness itself. Dangerous prey, but their cores held concentrated magic that would feed the system's power. And their meat, properly prepared, could strengthen a warrior's body beyond normal limits. Tomorrow's hunt would be crucial. My plans, my ambitions, everything depended on acquiring resources to fuel the system. These 10 knights were the foundation, but I needed to transform them from ordinary soldiers into something exceptional. And that transformation would begin in these hills. Zarek appeared beside me, his face barely visible in the darkness. You should rest, Cyrus. Tomorrow will be demanding. Soon, I said. I want to make sure everything's secure first. But really, I was too keyed up to sleep, too aware of how close I was to the next step, too conscious of the weight of expectations, Mother's blessing, the 10 knights who now depended on my leadership. I thought briefly of the old knight, my mentor, who had taught me to see potential where others saw only what already existed. He'd recognize what I was doing here. He'd understand. The night deepened around us, and in the distance, something howled. Not a wolf. Something else. The hunt was about to begin. The valley spreads before us like a wound in the earth, carved between 2 rocky hills covered in twisted pines. The air tastes different here, thick with moisture and the smell of moss. I signal Zarek to halt, raising my fist. Behind us, the other knights pull their horses to a stop, leather creaking in the sudden silence. I can see why the beast chose this place. The valley floor is dotted with natural rock formations, perfect hiding spots. Water trickles somewhere nearby, the sound echoing off stone. My eyes scan the terrain, cataloging escape routes, bottlenecks, places where we can funnel our prey. There, I whisper, pointing to a narrow gap between 2 boulders. We drive them through that choke point. Zarek follows my gaze and nods. His weathered face shows approval. The old knight taught me this approach during one of our training sessions, back when he was still lecturing me about thinking 3 moves ahead. I can almost hear his gruff voice in my head. Control the terrain, boy, and you control the outcome. We dismount in silence. The horses sense something, ears twitching, nostrils flaring. I gesture to 2 knights, directing them to circle left. 2 more go right. Zarek stays with me as we approach the center. The beasts are here. I can feel in my bones that same tingle the system gives me when danger lurks nearby. These creatures aren't the massive predators we hunted before, but they're valuable, rare. Their hides fetch good coin in the capital, and the alchemists pay even more for their glands. I kneel behind a moss-covered rock, pressing my palm against the damp earth. Cool. Solid. I breathe slowly, counting heartbeats. The mentor always said patience wins more battles than strength. A flash of movement catches my eye. Brown fur, low to the ground, darting between shadows. Then another. 3, maybe 4 of them. My pulse quickens, but I keep still. Zarek's hand moves in a practice signal. He spotted them too. I reach into my pack, fingers closing around the specially prepared bait. The substance smells terrible, pungent and sweet at once, but it works. The mentor had suggested this approach when I'd mentioned the hunt. They can't resist it, he'd said with that knowing smile. Instinct overrides caution. I toss the first chunk toward the choke point. It lands with a soft thud. Then another, creating a trail. The beasts will follow their noses right into our net. Minutes stretch like hours. My legs cramp from crouching, but I don't move. Sweat trickles down my spine despite the cool air. Then I hear it, the soft padding of paws on stone, the wet snuffling of sensitive noses tracking scent. The first beast emerges from behind a fallen log. It's smaller than I expected, about the size of a large dog, with mottled brown fur that shimmers in patches. The creature's eyes glow faintly yellow. It approaches the bait cautiously, head low, muscles tensed. 2 more follow, then a 4th. I raise my hand slowly, every muscle controlled. The net is ready, suspended between 2 trees at the choke point. One pull of the release cord, and it drops. But timing matters. If we spring too early, they scatter. Too late, and they slip through. The largest beast reaches the choke point. It pauses, nose working the air. For a heartbeat, I think it senses the trap. My chest tightens. Then it takes another step forward, drawn by the irresistible scent. Now, I yank the cord. The net drops like a falling sky, hemp fibers spreading wide. The beasts screech, a high-pitched sound that sets my teeth on edge. They thrash and scramble, but the net holds. My knights surge forward from their positions, securing the edges, pulling the struggling creatures away from any escape route. Careful, I shout. Don't damage them. We need them intact. Zarek moves with practiced efficiency, binding the net's corners to stakes driven deep into the soft earth. The beasts fight, but they're contained. Safe. Valuable. My heart pounds with exhilaration. The plan worked. Every piece fell into place exactly as I'd envisioned. The mentor will be proud. More importantly, this success proves I can lead, can strategize, can execute complex operations with precision. I approach the captured beasts, studying them. For healthy specimens, no visible injuries. Their fur quality looks excellent up close, and their eyes hold that peculiar glow that makes their glands so sought after. This is a good haul. A very good haul. Secure them for transport. I order. Double-check the bindings. I want them calm and unharmed when we reach Ambervale. The valley suddenly feels smaller, less threatening. We've conquered it. Bend it to our will. I allow myself a moment of satisfaction, breathing in a moss-scented air, feeling the solid ground beneath my boots. Now comes the next challenge.